All right, so I'm sure that this conversation will make a few people in the audience a little frustrated, and that's okay, because what we're going to get into today is the fact that cold calling is still king when it comes to lead generation. Now, you don't have to like cold calling. You don't have to look at it as like, wow, that's really sexy. It's just this amazing. It's not. It's boring. It's mundane. It's like the most unsexy thing. But when it comes to getting results, there's just the evidence is undeniable. It's it's like wavering in favor of this is still the best thing out there when it comes to generating leads and listings and client acquisition for the real estate industry. And we're going to talk about all the other methods. So everybody that's in the audience right now that maybe you don't like to hear that, I understand. If it makes you feel mad that we're sitting here saying, wow, cold calling in 2023 is still the number one way to get clients, yes. And we're going to talk about why that is. And we'll talk about all the other ways that you could potentially go out there and get clients. And then we can compare. So, Dominic, I'll go to you first. I want to get your initial thoughts on this. Then, Ben, I'll go to you. And then we'll get into some specifics.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've built our businesses like that, and I agree 100% that cold calling is still the best way to start a business and continue growing it if that's what you want to do. I mean, I've got a litany of reasons why it's best, but I'll just say that I'll tee it up by saying that cold calling is superior because it's easily measurable, it's trackable, it's predictable, which makes it scalable.
100%. Well said. We're going to get into that in a second. Awesome. Ben, your initial thoughts on this?
Doing really hard things, doing things that require you to face a lot of rejection are often hard. And that's where cold calling comes in, and we'll get into that. But it gives you the most autonomy, as Dominic just outlined, and scalability and low cost to entry, which I think is, some of the benefits we'll get into.
Yeah. So number one on my list, I had it allows for direct feedback loops, instant feedback loops. Well, what does that mean? That means that unlike anything else, you're getting real-time feedback on results. It's unlike anything. You can pick up the phone, and we're talking about door knocking here too, right? Any direct outbound prospecting approach, you can pick up the phone, knock on the door, and have a conversation with somebody who's potentially selling their home and find out right now, what do I have? Do I have an opportunity? Do I not? What is the quality of this opportunity right now or not? It's direct, and the feedback is instant, right? We're going to start to compare this to some of the other ways to get business out there, but most of the other ways, you don't get that direct feedback loop. In fact, you don't know for months and months and months and months, is this working? Is this not working? There are so many cases out there where somebody picks up the phone. Yes, they're scared. Yes, listen, I'm acknowledging the fact. We're not saying this is the most enjoyable way to get business. That's not what we're talking about. Listen, we know you'd rather be, making TikTok videos. We get it. I understand. We know you'd rather send out a direct mail campaign. That's a lot easier. We totally get it. We know that you would much, much rather write a blog, go to networking events, do open houses. We understand that. I understand that, right? I would rather do those things too. This isn't a question of would you rather. This is a question of if you want results, and Ben, you hit it. This is, would I rather sleep in, eat a big fat donut with a huge coffee on the weekend than go to the gym? 100%. But if you want results, that's what we're talking about. So point number one is this idea around getting feedback right now, right away, without having to wait on what's working and what's not. Your guys' thoughts on that point first?
Yeah. So, I mean, wow, that's powerful, because I think a lot of the other lead sources that people run to is, whether they know it or not, it's to avoid that direct feedback. Because when you do something that's really hard, whether it's cold exposure or it's run a marathon, physical or mental, right? You get this fight or flight type of scenario. And when you have that, you're confronted with your weakness. That is that feedback. And sometimes the feedback is, taken away when you outsource things, right? And you only get certain stuff. But when you're in it, doing it, you are faced with your weaknesses. And for some people, that's really hard. But if you can bring yourself to slay the dragon, if you will, like conquer that weakness, get better at it, that is where you can master something that's really hard and have tremendous success. And I think that's often where people give up, or maybe they just enter this without those expectations of the amount of rejection, the amount of feedback, as we're calling it, that they're going to get, and how to move through that.
Yeah. What you reminded me of, and Dominic, I'll get your thoughts too, is like burning fat, like losing weight and building muscle. That's what it reminded me of. And so when we talk about, putting mechanical tension on the muscle to break down the muscle, it is the only way to build muscle.
Yeah, find the weakness.
Yeah. And here's the thing. People work out for their entire lives and they never put on muscle. Like you'll work out with someone in the gym for years and years and years, and they won't change at all. Well, the reason why is because they never put their muscles through enough tension, forcing the muscle to grow. So what is the point? The point is, I think, Ben, what you're talking about is those things that bring us pain in the short term bring us results in the long term. And the exact opposite is true. What's easy today ends up being hard later because we don't get the result we're looking for. Dom, your thoughts on that?
If you guys went so deep on this, I don't even have any thoughts. Ben just went so deep into mindset. What I had to say is inconsequential now. So let's go to the next step. Yeah,
the next point is Dom, what you were talking about. So here's the thing, and I will challenge any marketer out there to do any type of inbound or outbound marketing. It's not that I don't like those things. It's not that I'm sitting here poo-pooing, cold calling is the only way. Listen, you could do this a million different ways. I do many, 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 many things. But what the challenge would be is show me something where you can get, as an example, because we just have the data from our prospecting challenge last week, show me what you could do in 3 days' time outside of direct outbound prospecting and generate 380 human beings telling you, yes, come over my house. I would like to interview you to list and sell my home. Show me. In 3 days' time, we're not talking about over 3 years. We're not talking about over 3 months. I'm talking in 72 hours. You show me another way to get that type of result, and I will listen. But right now, again, outside of direct outbound prospecting, again, I'm not asking you to love it. You don't have to love it. I'm talking about falling in love with the result. Show me what else you could do to get that type of result. Furthermore, what other tactic or strategy when it comes to lead generation can you measure the result? Can you track the result? Can you duplicate the result? And can you scale the result? In other words, we hear this all the time. Well, dude, I had a great year this year and 90% of my business was sphere of influence. Great. Can you do it again? Or was it just all luck? You just had a good year. Your sphere responded this year. Or, well, listen, I've been crushing it with Zillow leads. Phenomenal. High five. Can you do it again next month? And again, and again, and again, and again, and again, right? So going back to that point, Dom, what are your thoughts on that piece when it comes to outbound prospecting?
Yeah, I mean, that's the basis of my entire conversation about outbound prospecting is that you ask any of these people that send out, mailers to a farm, that's a great example, or run Facebook ads. you don't know what the reaction is of the person on the other side when they don't respond. You have absolutely no idea. But when you pick up the phone and have a conversation with somebody, you know right then and there whether they are qualified or disqualified. It could take everybody who sends out mailers says, "Oh, it's a 12 to 18 month cycle," right? So you send out 10,000 mailers for 12 to 18 months. You have no idea until somebody picks up the phone and calls you what exactly the response is. But when I pick up the phone tomorrow or today, I know exactly who I'm calling, what their potential need is, and I find out in 60 seconds whether there's somebody that might want to do business with me or not. Time, that's another great factor they haven't mentioned yet is time, how quickly you can develop a relationship and get somebody where they need to be when you pick up the phone and call them right away.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about time. That time's a huge one. Sticking on this one for just a second, though, because it's an activity that allows for you to track it and get that direct feedback, as we're talking about. It allows you to produce similar results day in and day out. You see, what happens is you start to create averages, right? This is what makes it duplicatable. In other words, if we were to prospect over the next 60 minutes, we know we would have 7 to 10 conversations. We just know that because we've been doing it for 20 years and we know the averages, right? Real simple. We know that. What can you do from a marketing perspective that in the next 60 minutes, forget 3 days, in the next 60 minutes, can you talk to 10 homeowners? Tell me. And then of those 10 conversations, we know on the average, we could generate 1 or 2 solid listing leads. This is somebody who tells us, yes, we're absolutely going to be selling the house. No, I do not have a real estate agent. I would like to interview you. Here are my specific timelines. Here's exactly when I want you to follow up. And here's my email address. Right? This is what everybody wants. We could get one of those every 1 hour of outbound prospecting, every 1 hour of outbound prospecting, where we can't do it any other way, which leads me to point number 3. I think a big myth when it comes to marketing or advertising or anything where a company is alluding to the fact that cold calling is dead and that's old school and come do this other thing, it is exactly what the real estate agent is hoping to hear. You see, the real estate agent is sitting there day and night looking for the path of least resistance. I mean, that is what they're searching for day and night. So when they come across a marketing company who promises 25 listing leads per month for this simple price of $X.99 per month, it's like, this is exactly what you guys are going to save me. And it's not until months and months and months and months and months of doing it do they find out a couple of things. Number one, they can't avoid the rejection. The leads aren't calling them. The leads that they're buying require them to pick up the phone and call them. And in most cases, you're still dealing with rejection. You're still dealing with, don't call them anymore. How did you get this number? No, I didn't fill out anything. Take me off your list. And it requires massive follow-up, massive skills, the exact thing you were looking to avoid that the marketer said you wouldn't have to do anymore. So this next point has to do with the myth or the girl in the red dress, so to speak, with the Matrix reference. It's like, wow, that shiny object looks way better than me having to deal with all this rejection, feel crummy. I got to pick up the phone. What is this, the 1980s? I'm going to go do this sexy marketing campaign. And it's just a huge mirage. Ben, your thoughts on that?
It gets into just the fact that you're, we can get into margins too. Like that's something that's coming to my mind, right? Of just, it's this illusion that you're talking about, right? You don't have to do the calling, then you end up doing it, and then it cuts into your margins, right? So now you look like you're doing all this business, but at the end of the day, your net is 0, right? And you're breaking even, which I've heard so many times. And so you've got paid outbound, and then you've got like the big billboards that you get into where people actually start paying you. How many people actually want to spend that or have the ability to spend that amount of money for the length of time that they have to if they just do what they need to do in the first place, they would get to where they want to go. And I just think I'll put a bow on my rambling here is just somebody that is promising you something, they're promising you things that you don't have to do. They're the ones making the money, not you, right?
Yeah.
If they're doing the heavy lifting.
Well, two things I find that's funny with that, right? If number one is, in my experience, again, I do a lot of this other stuff, right? It's not that we're talking that it's not that you can't make it work. There's plenty of people that are successful in buying leads and doing open houses and blogging and doing YouTube. Plenty, massive.
Yeah.
But the challenge is like a pay-per-click campaign as an example. What I found was through paying Google thousands and thousands of dollars month after month after month, these were the same people that I already had their contact information for free. The same people in my market going on to different website portals, filling out their information that I had to give XYZ company, $250 for this lead. I'm like, I already had Bob Smith's number. It's right here. I got it for free, through other data providers. That's number one. And then number two, which is what I totally forgot, but it was a really good point. I'm not going to remember it. So anyway, the profit thing, right? Yeah. So it's like you spend all this, it's like this chicken or the egg thing. It's constantly this chicken or the egg. It's the agents fighting with, I want business right now. Okay, great. You have to do direct outbound prospecting. Well, I don't like making calls. So that forces them to go then what? Buy a bunch of leads. Then they say, well, geez, that takes a long time and I don't really make any money. So they're left in this quandary. They're like left in the middle, this chicken or the egg. It's like you have to pick one of two evils. Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. That to me is the basis of shiny object syndrome. Dom, you look like you're pondering on something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about all the marketing campaigns, the different ways of generating business long term. And like you said, they're all effective in one way or another. But I remember back when I first started in real estate and started making calls at the same time, I'd show up at the office at my brokerage at 8:00 in the morning, 7:45 in the morning, get all set up to make my calls. Not a single agent to be seen at least until 10.
Of course.
So I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, if you're a real estate agent and you're not making outbound calls and you're not in the office, what exactly are they doing with those first couple of hours? So then I thought, well, why wouldn't, if you've got a massive mailer campaign to your sphere or you have got a fantastic Instagram page, YouTube setup, great. Why not spend 1 hour on the phone and just add one person, add one qualified seller lead per working day? What is that, 225, 230 people a year that you can add in 1 hour a day, and then you can still do all the other stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's because I would make the argument, again, this is not I would make the argument because most agents don't have an alternative. They're not doing anything. They have a strategy called hopium. They just wait. Literally, they don't even have. It'd be one thing if somebody was grinding, writing a blog post every single day, posting on social media 4 or 5 times a day. They're doing 4, 5, 6 open houses a day. That agent's going to win because it doesn't matter what you do. It's all about character traits. I think that the point that I think you're making is most agents are literally waiting. I mean, that's how they get most of the business. All the studies show that the agents that do 5, 6, 7 deals a year, they didn't get it from any strategy but waiting for Uncle Bob to call, and they got lucky. Uncle Bob called, and you got 6 of those over the course of 12 months, right? That's how the majority of our industry does the majority of their business. Let's talk about.
They were able to wait long enough, the amount of years for it to compound, where now they are making what they want to make.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about time. All right. So it does, like, when we look at all these different strategies, this is not my opinion, right? So this is based off my experience and then my conversations with people that are doing this at the highest level. So you guys can go back. There's a couple videos I did on the YouTube channel, one with one of the agents in the country that, there's 3 agents in particular. One who is In her third year, she'll do over $1 million in income from Instagram, right? We just had her do a mastermind with us. She said this. She said, well, one of the questions was, hey, how long was it before you got your first deal? And she said, I posted daily. This is her prospecting. I posted daily on Instagram every single day. And my first deal I closed after doing it for 1 year. 1 year. Okay. Wow, interesting. Then we had one of the top YouTube agents on our channel, probably like 6 months ago. Hey, how long was it before you got your first deal after really getting after it on YouTube? Well, I didn't close a deal for, it was a year before I closed my first deal. It was a year. I had one of the top team leaders on the podcast. She has an internet lead model. And I said, what's your average length between pay per lead and closing? 18 months, a year and a half. Now, these are three people that are succeeding at these strategies at a very, very high level. But going back to the chicken or the egg, it's like, okay, well, don't do direct outbound. Don't go have direct conversations. Do it passively. And you have to be okay with then not getting business right now. Well, I don't want that either, Dominic. I want business now, but I don't want to do what would cause me to get business now. You see, this is a huge disconnect in the brain. We call it cognitive dissonance. The reality is all passive marketing takes a long time, let alone the money investment, even just with your time investment. It's going to be 6 to 12 months before you get your first result. We have agents that we coach right now that today will call somebody for the first time, set an appointment with an expired listing, take the listing, and have a conversion in literally a means of a couple of hours, right? That's pretty attractive, but you have to be able to withstand some pain. You have to have high levels of character to do it, right? Because it is a very difficult task. So thoughts on that? Because I want to talk about something else that's really, really important too.
Yeah, I actually, well, maybe you're going to segue into this, but after making that argument that you just laid out, what do you think is the problem? Is it a knowledge action gap? Like agents just don't have the skills they need, or do they just not have the guts and tenacity to do it? It's one or the other, right?
So, the biggest reason why I think people avoid doing this is status. How they look amongst their peers, their brokers. They look at this activity of cold calling for whatever reason as like a dirty thing, like a negative
of the totem
thing.
Pole.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? You're cold calling? Are you serious? You almost you're like outsized, like you're outside of the herd. Because the herd doesn't do it, right? Yeah. Well, of course the herd doesn't do it. The herd's selling 5 or 6 homes a year. But if you look at people that are really committed to this outbound prospecting thing that we're talking about, we're talking now about some of the 1%ers in the industry. Top agents, top team leaders in the country making the bulk of the money. And if you look at the top of anything, that's why we call it the 1%. Means the 99% don't do it. And so people feel lonely. They say, wow, I'm going to do this really, 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 really difficult activity. And oh, by the way, I have to do it by myself because I'm surrounded by average that aren't going to do this activity. Yeah, Ben, what were you going to add to that?
I think people are so focused on Brandon winning at a really high level, and they miss the journey, what it took him, the year of posting, whether it's cold calling or Instagram or whatever, the journey that it takes to get there. And they're just so focused on a finish line, and they miss the part that all the learning is in the failing. You don't just go from 0 to 100. Like, it's a progression. And we've even talked about this, just the ride on the way up's not so bad either, right? Yeah. So I think mentally it's about thinking, like, I think so many people are like focused on the like visualizing the win, like when they get to the win and the finish line. And I think it's visualizing and giving yourself the ability to reward yourself like for the actions that you're taking. And that is the win, not the finish line. It's the progression.
Yeah, you're talking about comparing. You know, you nailed it. People are comparing their chapter 1 with somebody else's chapter 20. We talk about it all the time. Well, this guy in my office, this girl in my office, she doesn't cold call, and look how successful she is. Goes back to what we were saying. Yeah, she's been doing it for 28 years. You've been doing it for 2 months.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, she's got a lot of sphere business after almost 3 decades in the business, right? Or no matter what someone's doing, if you compare yourself to somebody who's been doing it a long time, that is also a really important nuance that people miss. It's like, well, I don't have to do that. I know somebody in my office who's smashing it on YouTube. Right. We do too. We smash it on YouTube because we've been doing it since 2017. You posted one video, you know, same thing with open houses, same thing with farming, same thing with social media, same thing with networking. Comparison, I think, Ben, you said this the other day, that it's a really good quote. I think, how does it go? Comparison is the death of the human spirit or something?
Comparison's the thief of all joy.
There you go. Comparison is the thief of all joy. And it's so true. It's like, stop comparing yourself, right? You've got to start where you've got to start. But Dominic, that was the answer to the question. Why we believe.
Too, I think, can I add one more thing? I think you're looking for this like dopamine of like winning that finish line. And I think when you do win mentally, if you can attach the dopamine that you're feeling, that high, because we either experience pain or joy, like that's the two that you can experience. There's really no. So if you can connect that joy, that dopamine that you're feeling to the progress or the process rather, that is like how you can rewire your brain to just focus on these habits, these actions to really grow from 0 to 100.
Actions over outcomes. We say it all the time. Actions over outcomes. And it doesn't matter if it's cold calling or what the lead generation tactic or strategy is. You nailed it. The win is the action. The outcome is simply a result of consistent action. And that was my last point is, and I don't know what else you guys have, but it doesn't, regardless of what you're going to do when it comes to client acquisition, I don't care what you do. Every single person, including myself, would tell you it's going to come down to the only secret magic pill, which is consistency. I don't care what it is that you do. If you're consistent at it, you can win. And if you're not consistent at it, you simply will not win. And you cannot fight that. You know, you're not going to do something once in a while and win at a big level, no matter what it is. And so I guess the point too of this video is to bring awareness around an activity that people that don't have experience in doing it, the marketers, the brokers, it's an easy target. It's a super easy target because it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And so naturally, it's an easy thing to sell against. That's why, you know, brokers are like, just do social media, or marketers are like, do this, do that. Because the person sitting there and paying by themselves, not wanting to do this activity anyways. So then when they hear all these messages, they're like the little, you know, things in the water. I'll go to the fisherman, Dominic. It's like attracting the shiny thing in the water to get the fish to go, whoop, let me turn that way. Let me go chase that shiny thing. It's easy to do that. Easy is the best marketing message of all time.